And I think really opening up my mind to the fact that we're all connected and really diving into that more spiritual aspect has opened up a door for me to get me connected more to myself. And, we talk about stress reduction, but also emotional healing and trauma and things like that. That's been one of my biggest healing tools.
Welcome back to the Thrive State Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. V, and with me today is one of my very good friends. You're going to love her. She's an expert in the field of integrative gastroenterology. She's Dr. Mary Pardee, and she's a naturopathic doctor certified in functional medicine. And she is, again, an expert in integrative gastroenterology and hormone balancing based out of Los Angeles, California. She's the founder of Modern Med, a telemedicine and virtual wellness company that provides medical and health services to clients from the comfort of their own homes. For those who cannot work one-on-one with a Modern Med practitioner, Dr. Mary has also created a gut health course that dives into the most common gut-related complaints and natural solutions to start healing. Today's podcast, we go into everything about how your gut is related to your performance, how it leads to chronic symptoms. You're not going to want to miss this. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Mary Pardee. Hello, Mary. Welcome to the Thrive State Podcast.
Hey, Ken. How are you?
I'm doing just good. It's so great to feel your energy here on the podcast. You've always been just so generous with warmth and with love. So thank you for that, Mary.
Oh, thanks. Right back at you.
So the people listening to this podcast, they come from different backgrounds, but so many people want performance and longevity, and they're looking for more mental clarity, energy, stamina, and they often want a pill for it, but they don't really look deeper inside. And we oftentimes that a lot of symptoms actually start in the gut, which is why I wanted to bring you on, Mary. So before we dive into what gut symptoms or what gut issues can cause in terms of symptoms, can you tell us what is normal gut function and what should people be expecting to see, with their bowel movements and things like that?
Yeah, let's jump into the fun stuff or the awkward stuff, depends who you're talking to. But you mentioned something where symptoms can begin in the gut, and Hippocrates, we're talking about thousands of years ago, said all disease begins in the gut. And so it's something that when we look at ancestral medicine has been known for quite some time, but it got washed away a little bit in terms of what we talk about in conventional medicine. But the question always is first is, so what should your poop look like? Like what should your stools look like? How should you feel after you eat? What's normal? What's abnormal? And I see that there's usually two crowds of people. One of them, they could have terrible stools, like diarrhea all the time, bloating. They won't say anything. They think it's normal. And then you also have the crowd where, if you tell them one thing, they think that it has to be textbook. Every single bowel movement must look like this. If it's off a little bit, maybe I should go to the doctor. And so it's usually somewhere in between where, we have the optimal stool, the optimal poop, but we're not expecting that every single bowel movement too. So I will go in though and just describe what does that optimal poop look like.
Let's talk shit. Let's talk shit.
Yeah. So the first thing to think about is size. When you have a bowel movement, how big should it be? And a general rule of thumb is you're looking at from the crease of your wrist down to your elbow. And that's roughly the size of your descending colon and sigmoid colon that goes out to the rectum. If you're having multiple bowel movements per day, they're going to get smaller as the day goes on just because there's less to evacuate there, which is totally normal as well. And in terms of frequency, having one bowel movement every day up to 3 or 4, also totally normal. And sometimes it'll fluctuate a little bit depending on the person. Now with color, there's a wide range of colors that we can see with poop. Some of it can be dependent on what you're eating. Right. So it's normal to have red poop if you just had beets, right? It can turn it like a purplish red color. If you didn't, then red is never normal. And that's one that you'd want to go to your doctor about because it can signify blood in the stool.
I had some red vines one time, like a lot of red vines, and I was really surprised. So beets for sure. And, Like me when I used to have a lot of sugar at red vines too.
Yeah. Okay. That's a good one to know. I
Yeah.
haven't heard that one. Have you ever had black stools? You might have actually, without being pathological, given your biohackerness.
Yeah, you can get black stools with iron, right?
You can get it with iron, yeah. So females that are taking iron, that's pretty common. But the other thing with black stools is charcoal. So I've been seeing a lot of activated charcoal, people using it for detoxification. That can cause black stools, which is totally normal. If you're not taking something like that, though, then that's another one. Want to go to the doctor because it can be upper GI bleed. So bleeding in the stomach or in small intestines or something like that. Yellow also can be seen if you're not absorbing fat. It can turn yellow. If you have greasy stools, that's another sign that you're not absorbing your fat properly. Orange, carrots, and sweet potatoes really common with that. So those are pretty common, especially in children. You'll see that happen. White is also one that you want to look out for. It's not normal, but the reason our stool is brown is because bilirubin is in it. It's a breakdown product of your red blood cells that goes out through the gallbladder. And so when you don't have that bilirubin present, your stools will appear like white or like clayish colored. So you also want to check out gallbladder with that one. Those are the colors that we talk about.
All right.
Smell, your poop should smell like poop. It should never smell like roses. So that's one that's not that fun.
Now,
But
is
you
there
don't
a
wanna be-
way you
yeah.
describe poop? What does poop smell?
Well, so what I tell people is that it shouldn't be rancid. It shouldn't be like you can't go in there for an hour, right? It shouldn't smell pleasant, but it shouldn't be to the point where you have to plug your nose or it's, people are talking about it kind of thing. It's not something.
My family talks about my poop all the time. They're like, oh my God, we got to stand clear.
Yeah. And so you want to look at the pancreas. If it's super rancid, because your pancreas is going to produce digestive enzymes to help you break down your food. So is something not going on there where we're not fully breaking things down and then you get fermentation? Some infections can cause it as well, but you never get the rosy smelling poops.
All right. So it's normal that it's not rosy. I'm going to tell my family you said that.
Yeah, it's normal. Can't do anything about it. And then consistency wise, we use the Bristol stool chart, and it's like the holy grail of consistency. You want your stools well formed, but they shouldn't be hard little pellets. So if it's like little rabbit pellets, you're looking at constipation there. Too much water is getting absorbed, probably because things are moving too slowly. And so you want to look into why things are moving more slowly. And then if things move too quickly through the intestines, you get diarrhea because not enough water is absorbed. So you want to be in the sweet spot there for consistency the majority of the time.
All right. Awesome. So just a review for everybody, this is how you could be your own doctor of your poop. Right. So there's size, and you mentioned the length of your wrist down to your elbow. You mentioned the smell, not rosy. It should smell like poop. You mentioned the different colors. And then you've also mentioned the consistency, which is the Bristol stool scale. And for everybody who wants to look it up, there, I believe 6 different stages or something like that. But you just want it to be soft.
Yeah, anywhere from 1 to 7. 4 is like your optimal on the Bristol stool chart.
Right.
So if you want to Google Bristol stool chart, you're looking for a 4, but it's okay if you fluctuate between a 5 and a 6, and you kind of move around. It's normal to have variation in your stools as well. So that's something to consider.
All right. Well, beautiful. So is there anything else that somebody from home can use to evaluate your stool, or would you say that that's basically what you need to know for normal bowel movement?
Yeah, shape is kind of a fun one if there's anything fun with stools, but you want it to look like an S most of the time. And that's where I'm talking about optimal. If it's straight and everything else is normal, you're totally good. When it's an S, it's like the shape of your sigmoid colon. So it's also moving more. So an S-shaped stool is like, gold star you get. But the other big thing is, when we talk about gut function, it's not just about your stool. It's also about how you feel after you eat. And so making sure you don't feel like you're 9 months pregnant all day long because you're full of gas or air. It's normal to have a certain amount of gas in the intestine. So, textbook wise, we're looking at passing gas 10 times per day is considered normal. I'm more towards like the 5-ish range. I feel like 10, you're getting up there, but it's okay to pass some gas. If you're passing gas way more than 10 times per day, not normal anymore. If you go to bed and you feel like your stomach is like almost like tight because there's so much pressure in there, also not normal. Reflux, when you have regurgitation into the esophagus, not normal. But, those are kind of some things to look for, and just like discomfort after eating, not normal. What is normal is having a food baby after you eat. So if you eat this much food, it's going to displace this much volume, right? So it's okay to be a little bit distended after you eat. It should go away in 1 to 2 hours. If it doesn't go away and instead it accumulates, meaning your stomach was flat when you woke up, after one meal, after the next meal, by dinner time, you have like this really big tummy, then that's where things are no longer normal. If it's affecting your quality of life, not normal. So that's a good rule to go by too.
Well, you bring up you bring up a lot of topics that we talk about here at my house a lot. Gas being one of them. But fortunately, I'm not greater than 10. But it's great to know that people could start passing gas. I have my bonus daughter who plays a lot of fart games with me these days.
Better out than in. That's what we talked about growing up. So
right. So now going back to like performance. A lot of people are looking for mental performance, more energy and all that. And they don't recognize that we should start in our gut. So how is it all related?
Yeah. And so women especially, but all people, you have to be having a bowel movement per day. So if you're talking about energy levels, that's a good, place to start is, are you having one bowel movement every single day? If not, that tells me possibly your metabolism could be off, whether it's thyroid or something else going on where you have a sluggish GI tract, and that's going to affect your entire performance.
Yeah.
Women are way more likely to be constipated than men. They're also more likely to have thyroid conditions than men.
Yeah.
And so that's one place to really start, is making sure that you're fully voiding every single morning. If you don't have a bowel movement every morning and then you start having them, you'll notice that your energy is actually picking up, and it's chicken or the egg, but most people feel a lot better after they have a full bowel movement, especially if you're skipping 3 days. The women that are listening right now are going to be like, absolutely. If I skip 3 days and then I have a bowel movement, I feel phenomenal after that. And so
now, before you jump into the next thing, is there a simple 1 or 2 tips to get people going again if they're not going regularly?
Yeah. And this is just if, the basics are off.
Right.
So this is the place to start. But having 6 to 9 cups of vegetables per day, that's a must. We're not eating enough vegetables. Our ancestors ate about 100 to 150 grams of fiber each day. Average American eats 15 or less per day. So we're talking about 10 timesing the fiber. You can't do that overnight. If you do that overnight, you're going to feel super bloated. There's going to be a lot more gas than 10 per day. But you want to gradually increase the amount of vegetables, especially non-starchy vegetables that you're consuming.
I see.
Also, focusing on the leafy greens can be really helpful. And cooking your vegetables in the beginning, they're easier to digest that way, can be helpful to increase that volume. The next thing is going to be water intake. Drinking half your body weight in water in ounces. So if you're 150 pounds, you're drinking half of that in ounces per day to make sure that you're having full bowel movements. Dehydration is one of the leading causes of constipation. Super common. A lot of us aren't drinking enough. So that's an easy place to start as well. The other one is going to be meditation, running, stress reduction, increasing parasympathetic tone.
Yes.
So from your mouth all the way down to the lower part of your colon, innervated by the parasympathetic vagus nerve. So that's your rest and digest. If you're in fight or flight, you're not going to have a bowel movement. So you need to be in that relaxed state to digest your food in the first place, so you don't have gas and bloating, but also to have a bowel movement.
Okay. That's so important, just to remind people that we're connected through our nervous system. And so many people are, like you said, stressed. That affects their performance in multiple different ways. But certainly when you're in stress, you're going to be in sympathetic, and that's not going to help you move your bowel. So that's a very, very important point, that stress reduction techniques actually help with the bowel as well.
Yeah. You want a balance of the parasympathetic and the sympathetic. One's not bad, one's not good. You want to be able to turn on your sympathetic, turn it off, turn on the parasympathetic. You want to be able to go back and forth, which heart rate variability is that exact thing. It's your ability to turn on and turn off branches of your nervous system. So, with my athletes, I'll have them usually wear like a Whoop or a different tracker device to track their HRV, so that we're seeing, okay, do you have a good HRV for you? And how can we increase it again for you to improve that parasympathetic versus sympathetic tone?
That is great that you just mentioned that. Everybody who's not familiar, HRV is heart rate variability. So, Dr. Mary, can you talk a little bit about how that correlates with stress levels and our nervous system?
Yeah, HRV is fascinating. It was developed by more of the cardiology field as an indicator for heart health.
Mm-hmm.
But now the performance field is taking it over because we can track overtraining with it, which is really helpful and something that we didn't always look at. We used to think more training better, but now it's smarter training better. And so HRV is heart rate variability. So what that is your heart goes lub dub, lub dub, lub dub. The difference between the dub and the next lub, so, when one valve set closes and the other one's opening, that's milliseconds. We're looking at a time frame with that. And it's going to change, whether it's, I'm going to throw things out, but 7 milliseconds, 5 milliseconds, 6 milliseconds.
Mm-hmm.
You actually want a big range between those heartbeats, meaning that your heart will speed up and slow down within a given period of time.
Right.
This indicates a high variability in your heart rate. And what we were talking about before is it's your ability to turn on the gas or put on the brakes for your parasympathetic and your sympathetic nervous system. Your parasympathetic nervous system slows down the heart and your sympathetic will speed it up. But it's a reflection of how in tune you are to your environment too,
Mm-hmm.
whether you're responding to a stressor, you'd want to increase it, or whether you're in the relaxed state. But you want something that's dynamic. You don't want a stagnant line there. You don't want it to be 7 milliseconds, 7 milliseconds, 7 milliseconds. You want it to have a good variation because it reflects high flexibility. And so we track that with heart rate variability. And people are usually like, what's a good HRV?
Mm-hmm.
It depends. That's the frustrating part, is it depends on you. So for you, 40 might be amazing. And when you're in the 20s, that means that you drank too much the night before, you overtrained, you were too stressed, something happened. And when you're in your 50s, that's like an amazing day. But somebody else, their average might be 100. And so you have to base it on the person.
So it's really good to let people know that there's no absolute number there, but you could use trackers to track just where you are and follow your own trends to decide, hey, am I more parasympathetic and have that variability today versus days that I don't? And then recognize what you've done on those days that throws you off. So that's amazing.
Yeah.
You mentioned the Whoop device. Is there anything else you like for heart rate variability? I know there's stuff from HeartMath and the Oura Ring. Do you have any recommendations there?
Yeah, I think I like Whoop because the Ring, I have athletes in my practice, and if they're weight training, which they better be if they're seeing me, then the Ring can get interfere with weight training. So just grip wise, I like the Whoop better. So we've got the Whoop, you've got the Oura. They measure really similar things. So I don't think one is necessarily superior to the other. It's just your preference where you want to wear them. There's also another device called the OmegaWave. And so with some more elite athletes, if you're really digging in, you really want to go in there, then OmegaWave can be a device that can be helpful too. That's more measuring parasympathetic and sympathetic branches versus HRV. I haven't had a ton of experience in that one, so I can't speak to it as much, but it is another one on the market that people are using. And then HeartMath, I love. So they're looking at heart coherence too. And so I really put them in a different camp though. I put HeartMath, and the InnerBalance is the device that I use, but they have the M-Wave. I view that as a training tool. Like you are training your HRV and your heart coherence with that. This you're tracking. So tracking versus training, seeing where you're at versus improving and going to the next step. So I think that using both of those are really helpful, and they're fun to use together too.
This is really great stuff for anybody seeking performance. We went off from the gut, so let's go back to it. And a lot of people have been hearing, I think, many people already know what the microbiome is, but I know there's some people who's just getting started into their health. So what is the microbiome and why is it so important to us?
This is one of my favorite things to talk about. I get it's like, I get so excited like a little girl. I think the microbiome is like one of the most fascinating areas that we have right now in medicine. It's a collection of microorganisms that reside within us and on us. So when you talk about microbiome, We have a nasal microbiome, we've got an ear microbiome, we have an oral microbiome, we have a vaginal microbiome for women. We now know that the placenta is not sterile. So we have microbiomes everywhere. The one that I'm more focused on is the intestinal microbiome because it's in the gut. And so this is all the microorganisms that live in the gut. About 3 pounds of bacteria that live there. Your brain is around 3 pounds too, to give you a reference point. But it's bacteria, fungi, viruses. It's all of these different things that live there. And when we combine our human cells with our microbial cells, we now have a term called holobiont, which is the collection of our microbes and us. And I really like this term because I don't think that we are human. I think that we are holobiont. And we really interact with these bugs in many more ways than we even know right now, but we're starting to realize more and more ways how they affect not just our gut health, but our metabolism, our brain health, likelihood for Alzheimer's disease, liver, metabolism. All of these things are really interconnected, which is why integrative medicine views everything as connected. But you've got 20,000 human genes. So the human genome, about 20,000 human genes, right?
Right.
Microbial genes, you're looking at 2 to 20 million. So if we look at it from a gene perspective, we're 1% human, 99% microbial from a genetics perspective. And it is important because you're going to say, oh, well, those are the microbes genes. They don't do anything for us, right? And the answer is no, absolutely not. They do things for us. So your microbes can consume things that you can't consume, like fiber. So fiber is undigestible to the human. However, your microbes eat fiber and they produce things called short chain fatty acids and other postbiotics. And these are the things that can interact with our human cells and create changes. They can be absorbed over the intestinal wall, circulate in the bloodstream, go through the blood-brain barrier sometimes, even increase BDNF, which if we're talking performance, BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, increases new neuronal connections so that you can learn things better, faster, and become more proficient in those. So BDNF is a big one for not only brain health, but also performance. And it's going to talk to your liver as well. So all of these postbiotics are really important in how our gut interacts with the rest of our body. And so that's kind of the starting place for your gut microbiome, but it has so many effects, including effects on your mood, anxiety, depression. We talk about the gut-brain axis as one of the big things in gut health. So there's a lot to dig into there.
Yeah, let's dive into it a little bit more, because what some people may not know is that your gut is tied to your vagus nerve, which is connected to your brain. So that's how your gut is related to all these neurologic issues.
Yeah. The vagus nerve is one physical connection, meaning that it is a literal nerve that goes from your brain down to your gut. Things can travel from the vagus nerve back up to the brain as well. It's bidirectional. We don't just get information from our brain and goes to the gut, but gut information also goes to the brain. And so they've researched this for Alzheimer's, possibly having this directional relationship. Do our microbes actually alter things in the brain? And it's a possibility. Same with Parkinson's. Right. One of the first signs of Parkinson's is usually constipation, a sluggish gut. So we really do have to start viewing these, issues and pathologies is not just the system that they're in, but all the systems that communicate with them as well. But the vagus nerve is not the only connection. As we just said, you also have the connection of your microbes that can produce these chemicals that go through the bloodstream and also communicate with your brain. There's been tons of studies with mice, not as much with humans, but looking at certain bacteria like Lactobacillus rhamnosus is one of them. It can be a probiotic that can be found in the gut, but can be related to anxiety. So what they saw is, mice can have reduced anxiety rates if they have this strain around. And so we're like, what's going on there? Well, there's something talking to GABA, which is a neurotransmitter in the brain that reduces anxiety, that this strain is producing as a postbiotic or as the strain itself. So there's a lot of communication that's going on that likely affects mood, which is a big area of research. But also weight. So there's really fascinating stuff about weight regulation, weight reduction. The study that I'm thinking of is that it's another mouse study. What they did is they took the stool of a lean mouse,
Hmm.
they put it into an obese mouse
Yeah.
via fecal transplant mouse style. And
Mhm.
so it's literally just the transfer of the stool from the lean mouse into the obese mouse. Obese mouse got thin. They repeated it opposite direction, took the stool of the obese mouse, put it into the lean mouse. The lean mouse gained weight. And so we're seeing really a regulation of weight genes probably being turned on or off. And, one of the short chain fatty acids that's really well known as acetate. And so what we saw in mice is when you can increase the amount of acetate that's present in the intestines, you can actually turn on the gene to increase insulin. So possibly the mechanism that you're gaining weight in these mice is by changing the microbial composition to increase acetate levels, which then upregulate insulin production, which can cause weight gain.
This is
And so,
fascinating.
yeah.
I mean, do you think there's going to be stool supplements coming out anytime soon?
Anytime soon, I don't know. So this is where, I'm like the gut health doctor. I do a lot of poop stuff, and people are always like, what stool test do you like? Do you like this one? Do you like that one? We're not there yet. So we have research, but a lot of it's still in the mouse model. A lot of it hasn't been found in humans yet. So we have so much more to learn, and we don't know enough to actually start making changes, especially in humans and not just animals. Do I think that one day we're going to be there and find like the super donor, like the ideal poop for weight loss, performance enhancement? Yes, I do think that we will get there. I just don't think that we're there right now, but it's really promising.
Anyone listening who wants a sample of my poop for yourself, just give me a call, send me a DM. Just kidding. So
it's going to be the new Tinder,
I know. Let me ask you, we didn't touch on a concept, and going through traditional allopathic medical school, we never brought this up before, but the concept of leaky gut. It's a phrase that's being tossed around. So what exactly is that? And then we'll talk a little bit about how it ties into the immune system and potentially also act as a potential source of a lot of the diseases that we have.
Yeah, leaky gut's an interesting one because it's one that was established in the conventional medical community. It's false, it's crazy, it's silly, it doesn't exist. And now intestinal permeability, which is the formal name for leaky gut, is well established in the medical literature. And so sometimes we have to be a little bit more open-minded in the beginning where we don't have a ton of the research because we might have it later on. And so I fall somewhere in between. Like I'd like to see a little bit of research, but you also don't want to rule something out when it's really likely to be there and we see it in a few years. So leaky gut, intestinal permeability is the big name for it, is when you have spaces in the tight junctions. So your gut cells should be connected pretty tightly. When there's inflammation present, which may be due to increased stress, or you have a food sensitivity, or something else is going on where you're consuming something that you shouldn't, but you can have intestinal permeability for a wide range of reasons. What happens is that these tight junctions are no longer tight and there's a little space between them. And that space allows for small food particles to go through, and then your body responds by creating an immune reaction to that invading particle. Food particles should never get over the intestinal wall. Instead, just single amino acids should get through, chylomicrons in terms of fat absorption.
Right.
Small sugars can get through, but you shouldn't have broccoli get through. It should already be broken down. And so when that doesn't happen, it goes over, your immune system says, whoa, what is this? This is not glycine. This is an amino acid. It's not glucose. It doesn't recognize it. And so it creates an antibody against it. And so it creates an antibody against it. And you can also have a reaction, meaning whether it's brain fog or fatigue or some sort of generalized reaction because you had that immune response. And now the next time you consume that food, and it also will pass through because you haven't fixed that intestinal wall, your immune system will respond by putting out those antibodies and creating another immune reaction, which is when you can get this, repetition of symptoms by eating the same foods. Usually they're more generalized and they're delayed, which is really problematic for establishing what it actually is. When I mean delayed, if you get stung by a bee and you have an allergy, you're going to know within minutes, right?
Right.
You're going to know within 15 minutes, 20 minutes, you're going to have throat closure, swelling, redness. Food sensitivities are delayed. They could be one day after. So you've eaten a lot of food between that time period.
Right.
So which one caused it, you're not sure. My caveat is it's usually not the food that's the issue. Because if you look back at what we just said, it was the fact that there was the permeability that was the
Right.
issue. So you have to fix the permeability. And sometimes that means take out offending foods that are causing, either an increase in the issue going on, increase in inflammation. But
Right.
usually you should be able to reintroduce most foods where there might be, one or two sensitivities that you keep out. So if you do a food sensitivity panel, which is looking at the IgG, the delayed immunoglobulins, not the IgE, which are your anaphylaxis allergens, and you get, say, 20 things that come up as positive. You can't eat walnuts, you can't eat broccoli, you can't eat chicken, you can't eat blueberries. That's a sign that it's not the food that's the issue. The issue is the intestinal permeability, the inflammation. Maybe you're crazy stressed, which means you have an increase in cortisol. Increase in cortisol reduces IgA, secretory IgA in the intestines, which can lead to leaky gut. You got to deal with the stress. You got to change your lifestyle. You got to do that to fix. And then you can also use herbs to actually heal in the acute setting. But if all you do is remove those foods, you have a food issue at that point. Right. And you get a restrictive diet. You have a fear of those foods that develops, and you're in a worse situation usually in the end than you are a better one. So I always tell people, figure out why you have a leaky gut. Don't just remove the foods forever. So that's kind of my spiel.
So all this is super, super detailed. And for some people, they might feel a little bit overwhelmed. So I want to be, Dr. Mary, would you say there are some general, you mentioned the vegetables, you mentioned reducing stress. Are there general things that people should just, have as good practice? And at what point would they say, all right, I should probably talk to a gut specialist or a doctor?
Yeah. And so when we talk about what we just did, food sensitivities or leaky gut, if you're noticing that you have brain fog or fatigue, or your energy is just not where you'd want it to be, or your performance isn't where you'd want it to be, first thing I would start with is like a really general elimination diet. Yeah. And you could do an advanced one too at home, but if you just go to a whole foods diet, take out everything in a package, take out all of the inflammatory foods, take out the major triggers, dairy, gluten, eggs, your big allergens, and see how you feel, and then reintroduce the things and see, was it eggs, or was it dairy, or was it something else? That's the easiest thing, and you can do it at home, and you could notice a really increase in energy and just how you feel in vitality and performance. And so I think that's a good place to start. That's totally safe to do at home. If you do that and you don't see any effects, or you still feel bloated or fatigued, that's when I would say go to somebody who knows what they're doing, because you're going to waste more money trying to figure out the supplement for you than you would if you went to somebody, did the testing, really pinpointed where your issue is, and targeted that instead of the no testing and guessing method.
This has been really, really awesome. Ladies and gentlemen, everybody, thank you, Dr. Mary, for pointing out that how we feel from our mental state, our energy, joint pains, and all of these symptoms could be tied to the gut, letting us know that what is healthy gut function and when to start, seeking somebody. And like you last said, if you don't feel great, maybe it's time to eliminate.
Love that.
All right. Thank you so much for your time, Dr. Mary, and for going over gut function. Before I ask my last question, though, where can people find you?
Absolutely. My company is Modern Med. So it's modrnmed.com. So that's our website. Instagram, I'm at dr.maryparty. And those are the two best avenues to find me.
All right. Here's the last question. Going through the naturopathic school, doing practice now, and just living a very full life, what would you say has been your best medicine?
That's a great question. I love that. For me, my best medicine has been like going into the more spiritual world. I come from a research background, and I was very black and white. If it's not in the clinical research, I'm out. And I think really opening up my mind to the fact that we're all connected and really diving into that more spiritual aspect has opened up a door for me to get me connected more to myself. And, we talk about stress reduction, but also emotional healing and trauma and things like that. That's been one of my biggest healing tools.
Mine as well. Dr. Mary, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining me on this episode. If you received value, I truly appreciate it. If you could leave a 5-star review, it will help the show grow. And I'd love to connect with you. You can follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at KienVuMD. If you haven't already, pick up a copy of my book, Thrive State, at thrivestatebook.com. And remember, you are your best medicine.